I'm going to start the session by, first of all, welcoming everybody. Thanks for joining this session. We do have our speaker today, Prime Impact Speaker Series. This is, I think, the fifth Prime Impact Speaker episode this year, this season. So Meron Feleke joining us. She's also the CEO of Impala Communication. I did send out an email last week introducing the premise, the background, the purpose, and the essence of today's talk. Meron is an extremely busy person. Thank you, Meron, for making time for this particular session, speaking with our MBA students. We also have got MA, MSc students as well joining us. We also have Dr. Anne Parchment from the University of Surrey joining us on this call. And I'm very much looking forward to having a discussion in the end that students are also very welcome to stay and contribute to. So very quickly, in terms of the Prime, if this is the first time you are joining a Prime Impact Speaker Series, Prime is a United Nations supported initiative, UNGC in particular, United Nations Global Compact, that started in 2007, which aims to raise the profile of sustainability in business management education through the 7 principles, which focuses on serving society and also safeguarding our planet. And I say the 7 principles, they are purpose, values, teaching, research, partnerships, practice, and also share. So this particular talk today is titled Whose Voices Are Missing? Rethinking Communication for Inclusive Sustainable Development Goals Impact. So over to you, Meron. Very much looking forward to learning from you today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, really. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm truly honored to be here and very excited. Thank you, Dr. Rick, for inviting me with the very short discussion that we had when we first met, and then now here. Thank you so much for having me and for seeing the value of communication in order to reach the SDG goal that it's set out to do. It's a big vision, but it requires a really various insight and input for it to succeed. So thank you for making communication as being part of it. And as you said, I mean, the student hub is also working on the model, the communication, strategic communication and marketing, and I'm so glad to hear that communication is the really critical part in the Prime model as well. So today we're gonna discuss about we're gonna ask and explore and discuss on the question set out, whose voices are missing. We believe it's a critical question because in 15 years working in this sector, although a communication company, but we specialize particularly on social impact projects, so that which means that we tend to see the different gaps that we see in terms of understanding what the vision, what the big goal of the various SDG impact project initiatives, and then how they are actually implemented in communities. We specialized in, we work in Ethiopia. We started our business in Ethiopia, so that means our insight mainly focus on Africa, on Ethiopia, Sub-Saharan, and neighboring countries in Africa. So most of what we discuss today would be our experience from that perspective. But we feel like these voices, if they are not heard, if they are not understood, if they are not integrated in the core part of any initiative programs, it's a matter of whether the project succeeds or fails. And we've seen that time and time again throughout the years. Those projects that actually understands, listens, the perspective of communities means, and the cultural context and the nuance of communities, that means it succeeds. And those projects that tend to ignore those voices fail. So this is what we're going to be dive into and discuss today. And for this session, there are key things that I want you to take away from this session. One being, as I said, who are the missing voices? Who are we not including into conversations? When we set out when we define projects, how are those voices are included in the room? That is the critical part. For that, we will give you 5 critical tools, practical tools for you to take away and learn from, so that to make sure those voices are included in projects that you will be leading as future leaders of this sector. And then also, how are the jargons, the big words, the 17 SDG goals, what do they mean? How do they resonate on cultural context? How do they mean when big, like gender equality, for example, one of them, how then is translated into different, how do they resonate locally in communities where different cultures, as I said, different contexts exist. So those are the things that I want you also to consider. And then the jargons and the big words and the acronyms, most of the time what we see, because, we had the privilege and opportunity to sit in with decision makers, program creators, program leads, to communities, those who are implementing in between, and then communities. So we've had the opportunity to see all these perspectives. And most of the time, the jargons, the big words, the really impressive, presentations does not relate to locally and does not resonate to local communities. So those are the things that I want you also to consider. And then also, how do we measure success? Because a lot of the time, communication, what it does is it allows you to see what you're trying to reach. What would define the objective from the outset. So what is the objective? Who are the critical stakeholders in order for those projects to actually reach and transform communities? And then how those communities transformed, how those success stories are captured, what does it mean? So those are the things that I really want you to also consider. What does success means? And communication helps for you to navigate through that, to define it properly and articulate it properly. So this is what we're going to be covering today. Please feel free to ask any questions if you at any point, and Dr. Rick will come back to me and ask me at any point if you feel like it. I have left on the chat box, I have left my LinkedIn address, and then as well as our Impala Communication website. It would give you different stories. We have a lot of stories in our website where you can, on your time, just to look at and to see the different projects, different aspects of projects. We're going, and some of it will be covering today. So thank you so much, and let's start. So as I said, my name is Meron Feleke. I am the CEO and co-founder of Impala Communication. And for the last 15 years, as I said, we've operated in Ethiopia and Sub-Saharan Africa, really on big, ambitious projects, sometimes, eradicating poverty and social impact. All the, I'm sure, prime programs diving into for you to understand what it means in a global context. We've had the privilege of looking at it from different perspectives, and now we specialize on strategic communication, which means understanding the objective to who are the key players, who are the audiences, to then how do then we produce communication assets to reach those audiences. So our mission in general is always to help organization and institution from those big global goals. How do you make it localized? So we help bridge those gaps. And our motto, when it's done really well, it's communication can change lives, can transform communities. So communication, we would like to use our platform, our expertise, our experience always to transform communities and change lives. And we're proud of a lot of work that we've done. And we cover about in work. We cover about 7 SDG goals out of the 17. It differs from the health aspect, the global, the gender equality, reducing reducing inequalities. All that, especially reducing inequalities, always is those the unheard or underrepresented communities to have voices in the room. So those are the things that we do. Our clients varies from World Bank to World Bank it's been our longest client. We've worked with them for a long time, and our job is, for example, on World Bank, is those findings, a lot of research works, a lot of technical papers that is released, and those has to be those recommendations, those findings need to be communicated to various depending on who they want to reach or who that recommendations need to reach. We develop, we take out all the jargons, 60, 70 page of papers into different communication assets, depending on who their targeted audience are at that particular time. So in that, we've been working with various international organizations. Again, strategic communication is a lot of that's what we really are expertise in. A lot of the times, it depends on the clients. They bring us at the inception of the project. That would be the ideal thing. One of the things that I want you to really understand from today's discussion is that the earlier at the inception of the project, especially those experts in the contextualized and really inclusive communication, where they understand the community they serve, the earlier you bring in communication into the room, then you will have a really insightful and really successful project. So this is what our agency provides. We work with government, international institutions, NGOs, private sectors, but we focus on social impact project. We specialize on social behavioral change communication. That means we want communities to be engaged. From the beginning, we want them to be on board. But how do you bring them on board? How do you understand them in order for them to be on board? What do you want them to do? And so those are always the quick questions that we keep on asking again and again. So inclusive storytellings, community engagements, those are the things that we've been privileged enough to work. We have been working with translating, as I said, global development agendas into culturally and grounded narrative where it makes sense to everybody. It makes sense to those audiences and stakeholders that you want to engage with. So here, I just want you to see why it matters for you. Why are you here today? From students' perspective, from educators' perspective, the prime mission is to shape leaders like you to drive sustainable development and to do it successfully. But in that, you have to start thinking how that goal is communicated and who are the most important stakeholders, who are the most important audiences that you want to reach. So I want to time and time again, the more you have those kind of answers, the more you become successful. As leaders, as educators, I want you to train the future leaders also to think about those stories, to think about those communities, their realities, their living, the way of living, their knowledge. Because a lot of the time we tend to top down. So we give them instructions, we undermine communities' knowledge, wisdoms. So those kind of things that the future leaders need to take into consideration. So as educators, I think from this session we would be good for you to see those. Anyways, from our perspective, these are the key critical elements that we see, and I want you to take away from here today. So we've seen firsthand how what success means and what failure means in project ASD project, SG project. And as you can see now, when and those matters, it matters because now when you see that the political will, the political commitment change, the first thing it would be affected are these programs because they are add-ons, they are nice to have, they're not integrated into our daily life. So because of that, and because it's very technical, it doesn't so far it hasn't received or getting the buy-ins of the really especially leaders and a lot of stakeholders who makes a big decisions in these matters, and we see what works, and we've seen what doesn't work. So always context matters. Contextualized communication means understanding exactly what's happening on the ground. So you can't assume, you can the perception of most countries, as you know, especially especially the global south, the way the perception is different to the reality. So understanding those perception that and over those perception and understanding the reality of today of different the global south countries particularly would but not only the global size, we can see in UK, for example, different part of UK see or implement things differently in different organizations, even businesses, corporates, their ESG programs, because it's not defined, it doesn't show the impact of their presence in most of these communities. Now the ESG program is the one that be affected when political will change. So those are the things that I want you to take into consideration. So why communication matters? Why is it that, especially for SDG programs, communication matters? How that the bold and big and powerful visions, how they understood matters, how it's adapted matters, how it's translated matters, how it's contextualized matters. Those big words in poverty, protecting the planet, ensuring prosperity, all these words has to be somehow translated for different stakeholders differently, has to mean something for different stakeholders differently. But that can only happen when communication plays the part from the inception of programs, projects, initiatives. It cannot be the afterthoughts. You have to really think about how, and communication always, we consider communication as an end product, i.e. we think about the videos or the posters or on events, the kind of posters that you see, maybe some videos or also really inspiring videos, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is strategically how projects really relate to at each stage of its phases. How is it then engaging with really truly good the stakeholders that matters? How are they engaged? How are they brought into the room? Those are the kind of communications. That's what I mean. So context matters, and in order for Prime to really have an impact, this kind of and the values of Prime has to be really articulated and communicated well. So currently, the SDG programs that we've witnessed from the global goals to the local perceptions, as you know, we've done this many times for many years. Often, what we see is it is too abstract, it is too technical, it has acronyms. I mentioned it earlier. Acronyms and big words really create gaps. It doesn't give ownership to the people who really want you to take on board in because all these goals mean something for, and it is a huge ambition and it has the opportunity to transform lives. But if they don't understand it, they won't be on board. And also, there are local wisdoms that we can tap in. The more we understand the local wisdom, the more understand the local knowledge of how communities have been existing for centuries, that had taken on board all the best practices of local. There's only one project that we've done so far with water. There is an institution called Water Management Institution. I think that they are the only one that I recall who asked us before the project starts, at the inception period. They asked us to go and
Meron, you're on mute for some reason. That just happened.
Can you hear me now? I don't know why.
You're back
Or
again.
maybe,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know. Maybe I'm the one who did it. So what was it I was saying? Yes. So the local wisdom. So there's only one project who asked us to, from the inception stage of the project, they asked us, a water management institution, it's called, one of our really incredible client actually. So they are the one who asked us to go into communities, and it's about preserving water in the area. It's a very harsh part of Ethiopia. Really, water scarcity is immense, but there are local practices that actually preserve water, and they wanted to understand how they do that before the project actually started. So those kind of innovative initiatives, innovative ideas to bring the project in order to close those gaps. Otherwise, the big goal, all the commitment that we make will fail to reach to its impacts. And also, I think one of the things that I want to add on this one is most of the projects that we've been working with have a really short period of lifetime, 5 years most of the time. This 5-year project, a lot of the time, doesn't give enough time for it to really flourish and then work with communities and have really understanding insights, and also doesn't have the budget to also include this kind of initiative, give time to understand the local way of doing it. So you have to be really innovative in order for you to collect all those stories and understand the local knowledge. So as I mentioned, the power of contextual communication, what does it mean? The part, it has a power. I keep on saying that the context matters, inclusivity matters, storytelling matters, local wisdom matters, but all this has to be done in a way that is respectful, that is sensitive, that understand the context, that has a lot of the time. This project, as all of you, I'm sure, have witnessed, when they are even advertised on TVs, it only talks about one direction. It doesn't actually show the full picture. It doesn't actually tells what communities' knowledge, what communities' contribution are in order to get, because these communities that we've been working for have had the privilege of, capturing their stories. They have so much knowledge to give. If we work with them, if we understand, if we give them, if we bring them on board, if we start to speak in their language, if we understand before we actually impose it, we understand it, and if we give the humility to learn, then you have no idea the kind of powerful stories that you can really, an understanding of the context and success. What it does, the power of contextual communication actually would mean success. And then also learning how these messages are transmitted, how formal the existing structure, how you can utilize the existing structure in order to filter a message and to reach to local communities. And this will shape the sustainable future. So one of the person that I really want you to look at, and her story, Bogalesh Gabre, is the most incredible story, the most impactful story we've covered to date, to be honest. Sadly, she's no longer with us, but her courage, her commitment, her work stays on forever. She has to, I mean, we've created hundreds and hundreds, we've captured hundreds of stories. And particularly for me personally, she is the role model. And her story transcends any part of the world if her stories are told. And we are so privileged and we're so honored to have had the opportunity to capture her story. And you'll find it her and other really incredible women who have had tremendous work and transform communities in our website. Please, I will encourage you to look at not only her story, but a lot of women in Ethiopia who've done a tremendous work, their story, because they were nominated for Women of Excellence, and we are part of that association. That's why we're able to capture her story. So because she came from the region that she founded an NGO called KMG in Ethiopia. It is one of the most, there are a lot of cultural and social and economical challenges in the region, but particularly the harmful traditional practices like FGM was prevalent in the region. So because she understood the community, because she was able to connect with them completely, she eradicated from 97 or 100% or something like that FGM practices to none in the entire region. That's what she could manage to achieve in period of, I don't know, 10 years maybe in practicing. And then also she mobilized the village to in one of the really big mountains near to her village. They managed to plant 4 million trees. 4 million trees.
Sorry, could you mute yourself? I'm not sure who is talking.
Yeah. Okay, they have now.
Yeah. Sorry, Meron.
That's okay. That's okay. So yeah, so the reason why I gave her story as one of the success story as an example is because this kind of understanding context means that the community will be behind you. They will tell that if you give them, if you make them understand, if you understand their, not judging, but understanding why they do what they do. And if you start relating and be familiarized to their environment, their cultural context, you can do wonders. And she is an exemplary person to do that. And it's one of our treasured work that we've done with her. So please, go and look at her work. So that's why communication should be the core pillar. It should not be an afterthought. It must be the central pillar to the project. Any project that you lead as a future leader, that should be the one of the things that I really want you to look at. It cannot be the side activity. It cannot be an afterthought. It should be the central planning and the executive integral part of this SDG initiatives and programs that you'll be leading in the future. And they should align the primes that the 7 principles Dr. Rick mentioned. So you have to really see how that means on various parts of the world, and how those how they relate, how you can really implement those big visions, as I said earlier. And we've seen when communication fails. We've seen when you look at it on paper, it looks really good. When they tell you in the room, the first time when, for example, when we are commission projects, they tell you, they start the program leaders will tell you exactly, the big vision, the big objective of the project. And then, but when you actually go to the communities and witness in your eyes, there is a big disparities. There is, it doesn't understand the context. It doesn't have the local knowledge. But we will produce the success stories. But those success stories does not mean actually it has that much success on the ground. So we really have to consider, how you can use as one of the critical tool, communication as one of your critical tool. And if you miss that, then also what it means. So to go back to our first point, whose voice I'm missing as a question is one of the questions I want you to always ask yourself when you start a project, when you start leading projects. If the objective is reaching women health, accessing, for example, there is a project that I can mention here. There's a project that we've done a while back now. It's a reproductive health project that we were invited first to just do, the communication assets. They told us like videos, posters. But then the program lead, I had the opportunity to discuss with the program lead what they try to achieve, and I've asked to be part of the strategic team. And it rarely happens, but and that particular, because the lead really saw the value of the communication. So we were part of the project from the beginning. So that gave us the opportunity to articulate who that reproductive health clinic that they wanted, the Center of Excellence Reproductive Health, also a teaching clinic that they wanted to create. And then it's called Michu Clinic. It's also profiled in our website. So Michu Clinic, on paper, it was incredible. But when then the project starts to articulate, those who were articulating those projects were OBGYN specialists, mainly men, and mainly and then other decision makers. So their understanding of Center of Excellence was how the actual clinic looks, the state of the art that they need to be including within the clinics. It was never about the actual woman, the young woman who would be visiting that clinic. Their role in this were never into consideration. And then because I was part of the executive, the strategic team, I keep on asking. So as a strategic communication, what you do is who's benefiting this clinic? So who's coming to this clinic? That was my first question. So what is that are you trying to do? So the women are the main, stakeholders in this, but her role in this was not part of the big picture. So because I was there from the beginning, I keep on asking the same questions. I gave her a name, I gave her an age range, and I always keep on asking the same questions. So where is she coming from? Is she coming from far? How would she how would she know about the clinic? Would the clinic be open all hours? If she comes hiding for her family, because in the hospitals, these clinics were based in hospital across Ethiopia. It's not only in one hospital the clinics were established, but in different parts of Ethiopia regionally. So different regions would have different context, cultural norms. And so those questions that I keep on asking, and also I say, okay, so who's giving who are the health providers? Not only the doctors, the nurses, the people everybody who she will have a direct connection are also the stakeholders. So that is how we keep on, I keep on asking those questions again and again. Now that project become a center of excellence institution. So now that Center of Excellence institution provides a great service, not only provides a great service for women, but also teaches other similar clinics across Ethiopia to do the same. Because compassion, for me, it was nothing to do with the state-of-the-art equipment. It's about the compassion, the respect, and the understanding of the woman. It's walking in their shoes, understanding where they come from, how openly they ask the questions when they get there. All those nuances that you really have to take into consideration. When you do that, you become successful. So those diverse voices in the room makes a big difference. And then also listening, understanding, really humility, as I said earlier, is the key here. So the other big part is collaboration over dictation. So most of the time we don't collaborate. A lot of projects are happening either in Geneva or UN in new agencies, most of the projects that we've been involved in, and they don't even understand the context most of the time. And those kind of projects fail. We see them, it's a top-down, yes, it happens, it gets implemented. Yes, maybe on paper the success story is written, but in reality, it doesn't actually have those kind of the impact that we want. So for it to be sustainable, for it to be really transformative for communities, it has to be co-created. Community has to be part of the deal. Community have to be part of the conversation. And then that means that fragmentation, that gaps, misunderstandings, all those will be eliminated in time, because the language would be the same, the understanding, the metaphors, everything that you want to say. Even if you make a mistake the first time, then you understand the nuance, then you change. Those kind of collaboration, it would teach you tremendously. It would give you a great insight. And also two-way communication. That means listening as well as telling. Learning is the most critical part. So the 5 practical, as I said earlier, your takeaway would be this 5 practical recommendation as a future leaders, as well as educators. What I want you to take from here is always integrate inclusive communication, contextualized communication from the word go. Understand what it means, who key audiences are, who the stakeholders are, what do they mean, how do we include them in this conversation should be the first one. Learn before you teach. You have to ask questions. most of the time as experts, as policymakers, we are labeled as experts. So we feel like we always have an answer, but we don't. And the more humility we are, and the more we understand, we do our homework, understand the culture, and makes a huge difference, because we learn, actually, we learn a lot. And then embrace storytelling as leadership tool, which means a lot of the time, these big numbers, these big graphs, and really fancy words, one story can change your mind. I'm sure you would remember the story, especially when after you have the opportunity to see Boge's story, you would know that you would remain with you, that you will take with you. So storytelling makes a huge difference. A 1% story, when you carry that person, even now politicians start doing it. If you see in parliament, they talk about this big thing, big commitment, and then they talk about 1% story, because that will define everything that they've been said. So storytelling is the most important part. And then also build feedback loops. You have to understand the community. Yes, first you go in, maybe assess, research, there are steps. Research is one of them. And then after that, once you get the research, and once you go back and start the project, what does that mean really? You have to go back and you have to create a mechanism to understand the ongoing feedback, whether that project actually succeed or haven't succeeded. And always, as you have to see yourself as a leader, that means you have a voice. Use that voice to include the missing voices. Use your influence. Always use the influence that you have to include, to ask the question. So am I looking at the big picture? Have I seen everything that I need to be seeing in order for me to make a decision, or to create this project, or to plan or execute this project? So as an influencer, as a future leaders, you have to really see the responsibility that you have in understanding what that project, what that commitment means for the community. And then you have to really bring in their voice into the room. You are the bridge. You be the bridge always, from community to the room. So in conclusion, what I would say is, my final thoughts. So the sustainable development is not only it's not sustainable unless it also incorporates the story, and the story is owned by the people that you tell the story. Because most of the time, yes, we do, especially in this day and age, you can see that videos are accessible, so we tell people a story, but do they own that story? Do they really relate to those stories? Does that story actually represent them? So you really have to go back and ask your question, those questions again and again, and you have to be the voice that includes other people, those who are not in the room. You have to bring them, you have to include them in your future endeavors, and listen, understand the context. I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope you've learned a lot from these sessions.
Thank you very much, Meron. That was empowering, insightful, and also very authentic. I think, the authenticity matters, particularly not in the context of what you just presented, but, as you inspire the future leaders, 99% of, the attendees today are future leaders. So, how the message comes across, that's equally important as the message itself. So thank you very much for this presentation and the talk today, Meron. So I'll open the floor to questions. I've got a few questions and thoughts, but I'll try not to monopolize early on. So I see Anne has got a comment question. Anne, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very insightful and, as Rick said, authentic. presentation, speaking truth, I would say, to communication. So I have a couple of questions, but I'm just going to ask one at one because I'm sure the rest of the audience has questions. So do you think that the SDGs are appropriate for actual communication to what I call the global majority? Because I don't like the term the global south. There is the global minority who determine what the global majority will do.
Let me understand the question. So do you think the SDG in the current setting, you mean?
Yeah, they've been put together by people from the global minority to determine how to interact and communicate with the global majority. And I question, it was an idea that's now been progressed. Well, I'm not sure if it's progression is the right term, for application to the global majority, who is diverse. But apparently these SDGs apply to everybody else.
I would say, you see, I think we have to, that's why I say we have to be innovative in a way, because a lot of the time, this we can use as a guide, as a global majority, because a lot of the time, a lot of this works already has been happening. A lot of these communities have already devised a mechanism to transform their communities and try to tackle this really various challenges that these communities have. And I think it would give us as a guidance, but we have to adapt it in a way that makes sense to us. A lot of the time, as you said, it's been devised by a global minority, as you put it, and then just prescribed to everyone else, and everyone else has to adhere. A lot of the time, pushed, even some countries are pushed, in order for them to incorporate it. But I think as a leaders, I think my thinking process in this is always you have to figure out a way to handle or to relate it to how it can be incorporated within the country that or the specific region or country, or we want to implement it. That's why I say I think we have to learn from the wisdom of those who exist in this part of the world for centuries.
Do you think that so a lot of money comes into the World Bank to be distributed and United Nations to other countries? Are they actually listening?
No, they're not. No, they're actually. I mean, now that's why I think the local NGOs, the smaller NGOs that you would see in our website, those are the ones who makes a significant difference. And the big programs should learn a lot from those small NGOs with limited resources, limited resources. How they can manage to achieve is incredible, rather than, as you say, big budgets and big projects.
I'll leave it there. I have one more question, but go ahead, Rick.
Okay, and we can always come back to you as well. We've got time for questions. I mean, one of the things that I sort of observe is, the nature and composition of the projects that you manage, Meron, reminded me of some of the projects that I led in renewable energy technologies, particularly looking at the implications and impact of solar energy technologies on rural development, particularly women entrepreneurs who are leading these energy-based enterprises, impacting community development. So these models, and I often come across, the bankers, the entrepreneurs, the regional rural banks, the sort of the tech providers, could be the charities, the NGOs, or the VOs, and also the government. So there's a multi-stakeholder model that we have to work with for similar projects. My question is sort of, also intended for my students here. While managing projects that encompasses a multi-stakeholder management, what sort of skills are required? What sort of skills are useful to have in order to be more effective in such settings?
That I think that's why I think that the glue should be the communication. That's why I think the multi-stakeholders always, and in many of the projects that we've involved, are I think communication will play a key part in order for these different stakeholders to have similar kind of understanding, because their way of understanding, the way of they look at same project is different, is completely different from one stakeholder to the other. Their interest, even their the interest why they take part even different from one stakeholder to another. So that means that gives communication is the key, the glue to harmonize all those interests and make the objective and the outcome the same. That's why I think communication plays a critical part. And if not, the fragmentation and the misunderstanding and the fail of the project, similar project happens because the interest is different always. Although they are working on the same, the outcome, the goal are the same, but I think the way they look at it and the way some projects, for example, World Bank, the way they want to invest. There's a project that we work on Nile Basin projects, for example, and the World Bank funded the project. So the World Bank wanted to spend the money, and the project lead, I remember we even went with them to film. It was a huge environmental project, actually. And so on the field, they were discussing on how to implement the project. And the program lead said, we're not ready to implement the project because the community are not on board, and we're going to wait however long it takes. We're going to wait until they are on board. And there was a friction in front of everybody while we were filming. In front of everybody, they were arguing with each other, and then we had to go back. So those kind of misunderstanding happens because the interest is different. That's why I think from the set go, if communication is there, the expectation can be really properly defined, and the interest can be properly defined, and then the agreement starts from the beginning would articulate the outcome.
That's really important. I mean, that's a really sort of useful example that you used to illustrate the problems. And in most cases, prior to project commencement, there's a strong need for sensitization. So whether it's comms companies or peer companies walking in, or simply voluntary organizations, VOs, going into the communities, having those sensitization meetings just to make the local people more aware of what's going to happen, really. And as a part of that, to have that dialogue and understand what the challenges and expectations are. But one of the things that you mentioned, I think, on a couple of occasions is starting the communication at an inception stage. It's very important to start at the inception stage. Would you have any examples of certain challenges that you experienced when you came in late, or when you were invited to join board a little later than you should have, ideally?
Yes, actually, because for example, in some of the projects that we invited at the end of just capturing the success stories, and those success stories, although they want us to capture success stories, but when we go on the ground and look at the communities or their understanding of the project is completely different from what we're given on paper. So we see that there is a completely misinformation, and even some communities don't want to take part, even if they've been part of the project, and maybe some technical skills, for example, trainings that they're being given to them for SMEs, for example. And but those technical skills, they didn't really value from it, and they don't want to take part. So those kind of things that we've seen number of times. Actually, we've given a number of SMEs, for example, from one of the projects we worked on, number of participants that we were given at first. Those participants were meant to have the trainings, meant to have, those skills that been given to them. But when we get there, none of them really, not many of them. So out of maybe the 30, 35 that we were given, only we managed to capture 12 of those, because the rest, they said, we really didn't see the value, so we don't want to take part. So those are really key. Unless otherwise really communities involved, they don't really want to take part. That's what we see. That's what we see.
No, absolutely. Thank you. That's very practical also, the on the ground lessons there. I'm just gonna ask the students here. We've got MA, MSc, and also my MBA students. Would you like to share your thoughts, reflections, comments, examples that you may have experienced yourself on the ground in the context of today's discussion? Anybody here from the participants would like to share anything? Please unmute yourself or perhaps drop something on the chat if that's easier.
Okay.
There's absolutely zero necessity to feel shy or awkward here. This is a free, supportive, semi-informal environment. So please contribute the way you feel ready and appropriate. Anybody from the audience would like to share any thoughts, reflections? Some of you are typing, I can see. Okay, take your time. Anne, shall I go back to you? I think you've got a few
Okay.
questions.
I have an observation in when projects are implemented. So, they get a lot of money from different funding entities, but the project itself happens in a very rural area. So the money has to flow from usually government or some entity like that to a smaller local area, to the people who are actually doing the work on the ground. That communication is sometimes fraught, sometimes to do with actually the allocation of funds, where the person in the rural area isn't somehow able to communicate and to get the funds to carry on the work. I mean, do you get involved in those sort of things?
We see that happening time and time again, but we are always commissioned by those. For example, as I said, World Bank is one of the ILO, UN agencies, WHO. Those are the organizations that we've been working in terms of the developing agencies. And most because we are commissioned by these agencies, when we go, most of these communities are already been told, or the people who implemented in between, as you said, government officials or local entities, local NGOs who actually implemented the project are the one who will guide us. But you can see, as I said, you can see that the difference between, as you said, well thought out cooperative, like programs, that project that really considers the local context. And you can see those top down, as you said, the money flowing, but not properly articulated in what it means when it get there. And those who actually implement the work themselves don't have the clear objective of what they need to be doing. So we see that happening, and we fill the gaps. As a communication company, even though we produce those success stories, and we know from experience those success stories are not really truly success stories. So you can see it, but we're not. Most of the time, we go where we are commissioned. So We have done a few projects that we've been from the inception ourselves when we got funded to do some of the work. But when we did that, we know how to do it effectively, better way, because we want the outcome to succeed. But as you said, there are, projects that really mean that much for the community themselves.
Do you think it might be worth writing something which says this is what you shouldn't do? To prevent and to maximize from a positive. I'm coming from at it from a positive perspective, as in these projects are usually taken up because they're going to provide value, but to maximize the value, these are hurdles that you may come across. It's almost like a sort of checklist or anti-fraud. I don't want to say anti-fraud, but to protect and to make sure that the community gets the greatest benefit from the proposed project.
I think you are right. I think there should be a proper mechanism of feedback. As you said, it doesn't actually, you see, as a private communication company, for us is to always, we want to maintain that relationship with the organization we've been working with. So it's so difficult for us to actually go back and make those comments, because I don't know how they would react, to be honest with you. But informally we discuss.
I was just thinking that that it would be easier maybe for academics to collect the issues, right? So you're not naming and shaming specific things, but that you could collect data which shows, these are the key hurdles, hiccups that can occur, which reduces the potential benefit of this funding. Bearing in mind that everybody keeps telling us that we got cost of living crisis and people are not getting aid, etc. That aid that is given needs to be used wisely. And if we look at it under SDGs, it's 16, justice. Yeah. I mean, maybe there's something that can be done underneath that, which is not, because there's always a reputational issue when you identify a key project. But, it's possible to describe projects which are repeated, the type of project is repeated around the world in the global majority.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Also, I think sort of piggybacking on that one, and when you look at the PRSPs, poverty reduction strategies, for example, typically every single paper that we come across, and this is coming from my background in international development as well, you've got the clearly laid out deliverables, objectives of the projects, and the emphasis is heavily put on outcome and impact of the project. Okay, that makes a really good publishable case study, an impact case study as well, which is good. I can't remember a single paper where they actually detailed on the limitations or the challenges that they experienced. They do actually, but they focus on the methodological challenges that they have, because the idea is to have a published paper. But in terms of the ground realities, and one of the things that Meron talked about was bridging the global goals with the local realities, or the glocal realities, as we call them, global local realities. Even the students doing international relations or international development should know some of the ground realities and things to look out for. As you said, things not to do, or recommended things to look out for when you are entering a new field. That's largely missing. So I think there's a big gap there, which would benefit a lot of people.
Especially now that the interest is changing. This is critical because as you can, the political commitment is changing, is shifting, and that means that these are becoming really critical. Otherwise, you can see that what works and what doesn't work, and if we don't really start to mitigate those steps that does not work, that means that it's getting harder and harder for programs that can be supported in order for us to help communities, to reach out communities really need our help. And I think it's critical now that we have to take it seriously.
Okay, thank you very much.
And some great points there. Thanks for that. I'm curious to know a little bit more about your current projects, Meron. I mean, I don't know to what extent you can share, but just a generic sort of overview of the projects that you're managing today. I mean, in the recent past, and what sort of stages have you reached, challenges, and things to look forward to.
So we have parallel. We have two projects that we are working at the moment. Both of them is about women leadership. One in healthcare, one in what do you call it? I forgot the name, but one. So the different sector of two different sectors, but for women leadership on how to cultivate women as leaders, because especially in healthcare, for example, there's about 70% of the healthcare workers are women. But in Ethiopia, this is the both projects that we are working on currently are both in Ethiopia. And one is on the healthcare. So 70% healthcare professionals are women, but in the leadership about 3-4%. So there's a big disparity between the two, and there's no specific training or specific programs that support women to become leaders. So there's one program that we're working with currently with another consultancy firm to support these women to become leaders. Some of the stories that we produced for them is before they actually get the intervention, what is their aspiration? What are the challenges? What is it that stops them becoming leaders? And you would be amazed at the story that, so this is from different parts of the region of Ethiopia. And it's been an incredible journey. And the other one is also a similar landscape, but these ones are already leaders. And this specific program, I think Packard Foundation is the one who supported this program. The other one is AMREF. This one is Packard Foundation. So this one is about this. We've already captured their story throughout the intervention process. So from when the women started and how shy they were, even though they were leaders already, a lot of them, about 35 women, and a different stage of their leadership position. So after the interview, it's a year-long kind of accelerated program, but specifically on leadership. So you can see the tremendous progress that they went through. So we're producing content on them. So on both this project, we were involved from the strategy perspective. So that means that we define together collaboratively on what it is that we want out of it at the end of the project. And it's been an incredible journey. I'm always excited when particularly women led programs. I don't know, personally, this is one of my favorite projects to lead, because you can see the difference as well. And not a lot needs to be done for communities to come together, especially if you bring in the right kind of community leaders and already vocal women on board, then yeah, you can make a difference. So it's been an incredible journey.
You can actually. I mean, it just reminded me of some of the work that I did on renewable energy entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. They had a clear distinction in terms of how much intellectual, personal, and also community capital they actually build over time. But also interestingly, I mean, you're very familiar with this, what I'm going to say, is the longevity of the businesses that are women-led tends to be a lot longer than men-managed businesses, particularly in countryside, for example, rural areas. Because we've seen the trend when men may secure a sort of a seasonal job in the town, they might just wrap up their enterprise in the communities and they just move for those seasonal income, episodic bursts. But we've seen women entrepreneurs and leaders and bringing the community together. They also tend to recruit and work with other people, which has got lots of long-term critical mass benefits for certain communities.
Yeah.
How long the accelerator programs last normally for women leaders? One of the things that you
This
just said.
this particular one, which is very actually, it's wonderful to see this kind of commitment from this kind of project. So I think it's been a year. I believe it's a year, and it's towards the end. So we produced 3 steps that we went back and filmed their progression, and actually we're finalizing that project and submitting it, especially the profiles of the women who participated, individual profile videos that we captured. We're going to submit it the end of this week. But it's a year long, so they finish in May.
And this is actually quite interesting. I'm just sort of pointing to you because I personally never heard an accelerated program running for a year, because I've seen weeks and months, because the partners who facilitate such sessions, again, driven by their own agendas, don't tend to hang out for that long.
Yes.
The year is actually quite long. I don't know your experience. Have you seen something similar? Or this for Anne, in case you got something to share on that. You're muted, Anne.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think women have just got more staying power at trying to make sure that they have a success. I don't think because they don't have options. I think women have less options, whereas I think, as you said yourself, men do have options. They can get up, go, etc. But women tend to have to stay in their particular location. So yeah, that would make sense. I think this is a really incredibly interesting topic, which has many different facets to it, and would require much longer, which we don't have most probably, to discuss. But particularly looking at, failure or hiccups in projects, or particularly would be interesting in maybe pursuing that a little bit more, simply because I think that, not just looking at success as only in one way, it would also provide education to those people who think that they've put projects together with successful objectives. Those objectives meaningful to the local population?
Absolutely. Meron and I have been talking about, we are planning, well, sort of more like discussion stage so far, for a longer session, looking at some of the impact cases. And, obviously we have to look at the hiccups as well, that will make a bit more hands-on. So probably sometime in the summer, again, this is more like a spoiler alert. Obviously haven't discussed it yet. Meron, it would be lovely to have you again for a much longer session, looking at some of the projects in depth. You did cover a lot, as Anne also said. It was so multifaceted. There was a lot of takeaways, pretty much from every single slide there. So, we might send you some follow-up questions and discussion threads later on. But really, really appreciate your time and the care that you have given to this particular hour to students. And also, thank you for talking to us today. Meron, is there something you would like to say as an epilogue before we wrap up the call?
The word that the sector that I was missing was the civil society woman. That's one of the things I couldn't come up with that. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an incredible honor, to be honest. And also over the years, or especially that part of the reason why we even started the communication company, and we established Impana Communication in itself, is the way Ethiopia was framed as a the with the famine, and always stayed in that frame for many years, and we wanted to really to have the opportunity to tell different side of the story and show the inspiring stories and the wisdom and the really incredible journey of a lot of communities who really would, if you allow it, if you give it the time, they will also teach us. And all of us you know, we know our communities exist. We understand how those wisdom means. And I am so happy and honored to be here to actually tell their part of the story, because, you know, this was one of my really dream of talking and bringing their voice into this kind of platform. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Meron. Thank you once again. And I'm sure we'll speak soon and continue the conversation very soon. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'll make the recording available for your viewings afterwards, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. If you're in this country, enjoy the sun. This is a luxury. Do not overspend it. And I'll speak to Anne as well very soon in our next Prime chapter event. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.